We had a good service yesterday for Brother Freeman, 96 years old, passed away, went to be with the Lord. Faithful servant of God. Here Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, sat right over there. And we're going to miss him, but be in prayer for his family and that the Lord would continue to give them grace during this time. I'm going to get right into the lesson. If you turn to the book of Ruth, I promised you a prophecy update today, and I'm going to hold that till probably next week. I was preparing for last week's, and I got into this a little bit, and I just figured I would kind of share it today. It's between Christmas and New Year's. We're in the study of Genesis, and as I was, working on Genesis, I work a little ahead, and I got to chapter 38 or somewhere in there, and I realized this connection with the book of Ruth, and it also connects with a little bit of some of the things we talked about last week as well. And I thought, well, this would be a good time really to try to do this. I'm going to try to cover the whole chapter, which if I'm able to do that, that's going to be kind of a world record, for me. But I need to, because it all goes together, and I want you to see some things that you're going to find that are embedded in here. And embedded back to Genesis 38, all the way back to our study. So it'll be connected to our study in Genesis. Embedded, that's in the book of Ruth, that's embedded back in Genesis 38. You'll see that. If you remember last week was our Christmas lesson, and toward the end of the lesson, I told you that the Christmas story is embedded at the very first of the Bible in the book of Genesis. And we took those 10 names, the first 10 names. Adam if you look it up, just go on your computer or your phone after church. Don't do it now, after church. What does Adam mean? In biblical times, they in old days, not just only in the biblical, but in old days, the names meant something. They still mean something today, but nobody pays any attention to it, but they meant something. And Adam meant man, and of course that sentence, the first 10 names talked about Jesus coming and so forth. I won't teach through it because I do not have time today, but we'll see something similar here today as well. So I'm just going to start, and then we'll go through. So let's start. We're going to talk about the kinsman redeemer, a redeemer that is kin folks. So we'll start that. Let's look at verse 1, chapter 1, verse 1. It came to pass in the days when the judges ruled that there was a famine in the land, and a certain man of Bethlehem, Judah, went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. All right, so this is in the days of Judges. So we start at Genesis, go all the way to the book of Judges. Ruth is the next book over. And the thing about the book of Judges, you can look in the very last verse of the last chapter in the book of Judges. It says this: in those days there was no king in Israel. Every man did that which was right in his own eyes. Now that's a scary sentence, isn't it? Everybody just did what they wanted to. And when you read the book of Judges, you will find that, when man just does what he wants, it gets pretty tough. It gets pretty bad. And the book of Judges is exactly like that. A little bit like this. When God had Israel in their land and had given them the law and certain things that they should follow, God certainly didn't intend that through the ups and downs of life that they would leave their land unless he expelled them, which he had to do a time or two. But in fact, there was a drought in the land. Now, we know a little bit about droughts in West Texas. We live here, and we understand we're kind of in one now. The other day, it got a little foggy. How many of you remember that? 3 or 4 days ago, got a little foggy, and there was a little bit of moisture on the ground. That's the best we can do sometimes, And we were glad to have that, glad to have that. And so they were in a much worse situation, though, so bad that he left Israel and went to live in another country. He crossed back, went back east, across the Jordan River, and living in the land of Moab. He took his wife and his 2 sons. So I could talk a long time of being out of the will of the Lord here, but we'll see that it doesn't work out well for him once he does that. I mean, didn't you think if God put the children of Israel in Israel after all they've been through and Joshua cleared out and all that, that God was going to put them in there and starve them out with no water, you know, and no, because there was a famine in the land, nothing could grow, and no, God was not going to do that. And everybody else stayed, as far as we know. This guy's the only guy that left. At the time, maybe some more did, but this is the only guy in this group right here. Let's keep going. And the name of the man was Elimelech. There's going to be a lot of names in this thing if you're not familiar with it, so I'm not going to major on his or anybody. I'm going to stay with the main names so we can keep it straight, because we're going to cover a lot of activity here in the next few minutes. His name is Elimelech. The name of his wife is Naomi. The name of his two sons, Mahlon and Chilion, Ephratites of Bethlehem, Judea, and they came into the country of Moab and continued there. So he's got him and his wife and two sons. They're of the tribe of Judah. Doesn't say here, but we'll get to that. But just because we're in Genesis, I want us to keep some of these things connected. So we had Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Jacob's name was changed to Israel. He had 12 sons. Where we are in Genesis, he's had 11 of those 12 sons. And the fourth son born was Judah. Jesus, we talked about last week, came from the tribe of Judah. So this is of the lineage of Judah. They're Judah. They're living in Bethlehem of Judea. There, Bethlehem, Judah, you see that. Ephratites, it just means that is a Canaanite word for the area around Bethlehem. It's like if you said, you got Lubbock, and Lubbock lives on the South Plains. Lubbock is in the South Plains. It's kind of like that. That is kind of the word there. But they move out of there and they go to Moab and they continue there. That means they're not just staying until it rains in Israel, but they're going to stay a long time. We'll see this in a second. They're going to end up staying 10 years. Verse 3, and Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left and her two sons. So he leads his family over there, and then he dies. He passes away. She's left with her two sons. And they, instead of going back, verse 4, and they took them wives of the women of Moab. So these would be Gentile wives. So these are Jews, tribe of Judah, living in a country where they shouldn't be, and they take Gentile wives. The name of the one was Orpah, the name of the other, Ruth. And they dwelled there about 10 years. They just stayed there, didn't they? And I'm going to say this. God, he wanted Israel to marry within their tribe, but certainly within Israel. But it wasn't like you think of today, like prejudice. It wasn't anything like that. It was because God had given Israel the law and a certain set of things in which to know him and worship him, and God wanted them to be his people, and he wanted to be their God, and then he wanted Israel to be a testimony to the world. That was the reason, so that they could be pure in that way. And he knew that if they just married, for example, the Canaanites, or these are Moabites, not Canaanites, but that they would turn their hearts like Solomon's heart was turned from the true God to worship other gods. And so that's what God had in mind when he commanded them of that. Well, but some of them took Gentile wives. There's Gentiles in the lineage of Jesus. This is going to be one example. And so not all of them were bad people. We're going to see that in just a little bit. And Mahlon and Chilion, verse 5, the two sons, died also, both of them, and the women were left of her two sons and her husband. So what we have left now is Naomi and her two daughters-in-law. Look at verse 6. And she arose with her daughters-in-law that she might return from the country of Moab. For she had heard in the country of Moab how the Lord had visited his people in giving them bread. So I'm not going to read down through verse 13 just because for the time, but I'm going to just tell you there's a little bit of discussion here, and they start traveling, and are the girls going to stay or not? But Naomi's headed back. And Naomi encourages the girls, you just stay here in Moab. Stay in Moab, get you another husband. I'm not going to have any more sons for you. You stay. I'm going back home. And one of them, look at verse 14. They lifted up their voice and wept again, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law. She kissed her goodbye. One of the daughters-in-law leaves, But Ruth clave unto her. And she, this is Naomi, the mother-in-law, and she said, Behold, thy sister-in-law is gone back unto her people, and unto her gods, little g. Return thou after thy sister-in-law. And Ruth said, Entreat me not to leave thee, or to return from following after thee, for whither thou goest, this is kind of the famous saying of hers, whither thou goest, I will go. Whither thou lodgest, I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God, big G, my God. Where thou diest will I die, and there will I be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if aught but death part thee and me. And when she saw that she was steadfastly minded to go with her, she then left speaking with her. So Ruth just tells her, I'm staying. Orpha, the other sister-in-law, she stays in Moab. Ruth says, I'm going. I'm going with you. I'm staying with you or going with you. Let's go back to Israel. I am going to leave my people and everything I know, and I'm going to allow your God to be my God. And I'm going to go with you. And that's what she makes that decision. And so the two go. Look at verse 19. They two went until they came to Bethlehem. And it came to pass when they were come to Bethlehem that all the city was moved about them. One of those towns where everybody knows everybody, right? And then here comes Naomi back and said, Is this Naomi? I don't know why they exactly said that, but I think, she must have really borne the sorrow and the difficulties of the last 10 years as they looked at her. Says, Is that Naomi? And she said unto them, Call me not Naomi. Naomi means pleasant. Remember the names? So that's why she said that. Don't call me pleasant. I'm not pleasant. Call me Mara, for the Almighty hath dealt very bitterly with me. Don't call me pleasant. Call me bitter. Because God, I'm telling you, for the last 10 years, it's been tough for me. I went out full, verse 21, and the Lord hath brought me home again empty. Why then call ye me Naomi, seeing the Lord had testified against me, and the Almighty hath afflicted me? And she's blaming the Lord here, but let me keep going. Verse 22, so Naomi returned, and Ruth, the Moabite, her daughter-in-law, with her, which returned out of the country of Moab, and they came to Bethlehem in the beginning of barley harvest. I could stop on any of these verses and just take the rest of the time, and I'm endeavoring to get finished. So I'm going to keep going, chapter 2, because we got some stuff at the end I want to kind of put through us here. And look at chapter 2, we'll keep going. Chapter 2, verse 1, this is a background verse for us. And Naomi had a kinsman of her husband's, a mighty man of wealth, of the family of Elimelech, and his name was Boaz. So just remember that. One of her kin folks was a guy named Boaz. He owned a lot of the fields around Bethlehem, just for that information. All right, look at verse 2. And Ruth the Moabitess said unto Naomi, Let me now go into the field and glean ears of corn after him, in whose sight I shall find grace. And she said unto her, Go, my daughter. Now, when they left, before they went to Moab, they had land, because all of Israel was allotted land. And so their family had land, and he had land, and Elimelech had sold that land to somebody. Now, they didn't really have what we call today, if you're familiar with the real estate term, fee simple. They didn't really have what we have today, where if I sell where my house is at, and somebody owns it, they own it until they sell it. For Israel, it was different. It was a little bit like a lease. So he sold his land. The guy paid him full price for it, whoever bought it, and that guy would work that land. But if I came back, I could redeem that land. I'd have to pay him what it was worth. Even if it had gone up in value, I'd have to pay him, its value, whatever. But I could do it. I could buy it back, I'd have to pay him for it, so the guy didn't lose money, and then he couldn't work anymore. I would take it back over again. That's the way it worked in those days. And so, Naomi had lost her land, and she had no way. She was poor. I mean, she'd gone through it, and she had nothing. They had nothing. She couldn't redeem her land. And so Ruth, the daughter-in-law, was with her and said, look, we got no food in the house. I'm going to have to go and glean the harvest. Now, the welfare system of this day in the Old Testament was different than today. This is it today. This is it in the Old Testament. This is from the Old Testament law, Leviticus 23, 22. When you reap the harvest of your land, thou shalt, he's speaking to the farmers here and the landowners. When you reap the harvest of your land, thou shalt not make clean riddance of the corners of the field. When thou reapest, neither shalt thou gather any gleaning or drop grain of thy harvest. Thou shalt leave them unto the poor and the stranger. I'm the Lord your God. God said there's going to be some poor people that are going to need some food. Now, you big wealthy landowners, when you run the reapers through there, the crew to harvest your field, if something falls on the ground, you leave it there. Also, when you kind of go in there and you got a corner of the field, just leave the whole corner. Leave the corners of your field and any gleanings. And anybody that's poor, they'll have to work for it. It's a different thing they'll have to work for it, but there's going to be food for everybody. And so they go, and the poor people, after the harvesters would go, if somebody needed food, you could go to the corner of the field, or you could sift through after the harvesters, you could what's called glean the field. You could get the gleanings. And so Ruth's the daughter-in-law, and she said, I'll just go, and we got no food. I'll just go and I'll find a corner of the field someplace, or I'll follow some harvesters someplace, and I will get us some grain. And of course, Naomi knows they don't have any food, and she said, go ahead. You go ahead. And verse 3, she went and came and gleaned in the field after the reapers. And her hap, do you see that? Her hap was to light on a part of the field belonging to Boaz, who was of the kindred of Elimelech. Now, we talked about Boaz, right? He happened to be one of the big landowners, and you see that word hap? I'm going to replace it with a phrase that you'll recognize. It just so happened that she landed on Boaz's field. Well, it didn't just so happen. That's the reason God didn't phrase that this way, because he has all this planned out, see. But the word puts that there so that we know that it was circumstantial, God's providence, really, that she ended up on Boaz's field. She didn't know Boaz. They didn't know. They don't have the Bible. They didn't know chapter 2, verse 1, where Boaz was introduced. Naomi knew who he was. She happened to know he was a kinsman, but they had not made contact. All right. She went and came, look at verse 3, and gleaned in the field after the reapers. I read that one. Look at verse 4. And behold, Boaz, he's the landowner, came from Bethlehem. He's going to go check his field, see how they're doing. And said unto the reapers, the Lord be with you. And they answered him, the Lord bless thee. Then said Boaz unto his servant, I'm going to bring up this servant later on. Just remember, he's speaking now to an unnamed servant of his that was set over the reapers. Whose damsel is this? He sees Ruth out there, and and she's kind of gleaning behind the reapers. Whose damsel is this? Who is that? And the servant that was set over the reapers answered and said, it's the Moabitish damsel. She's from Moab, that came back with Naomi out of the country of Moab. And she said, I pray you, she asked, this is servant speaking, I pray you, let me glean and gather after the reapers among the sheep. So she came and hath gathered even from morning even till now, that she tarried a little in the house. She asked if she could glean our fields, and I said it was okay. And I'm telling you, she's worked. I mean, the whole morning she's just worked and gathered. Then Boaz goes and speaks to her. This is very unusual. For this wealthy landowner to go speak to one of the poor people that's just grabbing a few little bit of grain. And said Boaz unto Ruth, hearest thou not, my daughter? Go not to glean in another field, neither go from hence, but abide here fast by my maidens. Let thine eyes be on the field that they do reap, and go thou after them. Have I not charged the young men that they shall not touch thee? And when thou art athirst, go into the vessels and drink of that which the young men have drawn. She fell on her face and bowed herself to the ground and said unto him, What have I found grace in thine eyes, that thou shouldest take knowledge of me, seeing I'm a stranger? Boaz answered and said unto her, It hath been fully shown me all that thou hast done unto thy mother-in-law since the death of thine husband, and how thou hast left thy father and thy mother and the land of thy nativity, and art come unto a people which thou knewest not, nor heretofore. Verse 12, the Lord recompense thy work. I like this verse. And a full reward be given thee of the Lord God of Israel, unto whose wings thou art come to trust. And she said, Let me find favor in thy sight, my Lord, for that thou hast comforted me. For thou hast spoken friendly unto thine handmaid, though I be not like unto one of thy handmaids. So Boaz speaks to Ruth, and he says, Look, I know, I'm going to paraphrase a little, I know that most of the time when the poor people come and they do the gleaning, they just grab some grain and they leave, and they're not really welcome to the crew's water. I know you're not part of the regular crew, but you are welcome to our water. When you get thirsty, you get over here. Look, and by the way, I've told the other guys that are out here harvesting, they're not to touch you. They will not harm you. You stay with us the whole time. And when we move from field to field, you stay in my field. I want you to feel welcome and to stay in my field. And you get thirsty, you get, and she's overwhelmed. But this is something that doesn't happen, you see. She is overwhelmed with the kind that she said, I don't understand. And Boaz said, I know who you are. It's all been shown me. I know that you are taking care of Naomi. And you've come from a far country, and you've left everything you've known, and you've come over here and made Naomi's God, which is Boaz's God. I made Naomi's God your God, and you've come over here and left everything, and you're taking care. And I'm going to take care of you. I'll take care of you. So she goes and she continues on. All right, so let's keep going, and let's keep going here. Look at verse 14, a very strange verse. And Boaz said unto her, At mealtime come thou hither, and eat of the bread, and dip thy morsel in vinegar. And she sat beside the reapers, and he reached her parched corn, and she did eat, and was sufficed, and left. Boaz then, when it was lunchtime, he invited her to sit there with the rest of his crew. And then he, Boaz, served her. The landowner served her, took care of her. Now that certainly did not happen in those days. So she was sufficed and left. Verse 15. When she was risen up to glean, Boaz commanded his young men, saying, Let her glean even among the sheaves, and reproach her not. Look at verse 16. And let fall also some of the handfuls of purpose. I got that phrase underlined in my Bible. Handfuls of purpose for her, and leave them that she may glean them, and rebuke her not. There are, I know of a church, there's a few churches. We do it a little different here, but some churches, like we support a lot of missionaries, and there are churches that they'll support a lot of missionaries, and then they'll have a category, but there's no missionary name on there, and they'll just put an allocation of their mission giving in this category that they call handfuls of purpose. And when one of their missionaries, as they go through the year, or anybody, let's say, has an issue, kind of something comes up, they've got money that they've left on purpose, you see, to handle a need. What he's saying to them is, handfuls on, you throw some look, you guys are good gleaners. And sometimes you don't leave much on the ground. And every now and then, I want you to throw a handful of grain on the ground on purpose. That's what he's saying. You make sure on purpose that she's got something to eat and something to do. Handfuls of purpose, and leave them that she may glean them and rebuke her not. He gives his crew strict instructions. Take care of her, doesn't he? So she gleaned the field until even, till that night, and beat out that which she gleaned, and it was about an ephah of barley. Verse 18. She took it up and went into the city, and her mother-in-law saw that what she had gleaned. She saw, man, wow, good job. And she brought it forth and gave it to her that had reserved after she had sufficed. And her mother-in-law said unto her, where hast thou gleaned today, and where wroughtest thou? Where'd you get all this? Blessed be he that did take knowledge of thee. And she showed her mother-in-law with whom she had wrought, and said, this man named with whom I wrought today is Boaz. And Naomi said unto her daughter-in-law, blessed be. Now, Naomi's given the Lord a little bit of a rough time up to now, hadn't she? Blessed, now she's got changing her song. Blessed be he of the Lord who hath not left off his kindness to the living and to the dead. God has not left me destitute, and he's blessing us, and he's blessing even my dead husband and sons. He's not left off his kindness. And Naomi said unto her, the man is near of kin unto us, one of our next kinsmen. All right, so I'm going to just move for time's sake, but basically she continues harvesting in the field. That's what the next 3 verses said, so day by day. All right, so let's go to chapter 3. Then Naomi, her mother-in-law, said unto her, my daughter, shall I not seek rest for thee, that it may be well with thee? This is one of the most misunderstood chapters in the Bible. In fact, non-believers that like to criticize the Bible will talk about this being kind of a wicked scene here on the harvest floor. It's not that at all. Naomi, in fact, and we know that from many verses, and I don't have time to get in too much detail, but Naomi here knows that Boaz is what's called her near kinsman, and that Boaz can redeem their land for them, and when he does that, he could also marry Ruth and take over that responsibility. And as they would have children, it's like keeping Naomi and her husband's family alive. That's the way they did it in the Old Testament. If one would die, there would be a way to keep that family alive. And so she's figured all that out, and she said, I'm going to take care of you, I'm going to get you a husband, and we're going to see if he can take the responsibility of being a kinsman redeemer. Can he take that responsibility and get our land back? And can he keep our family alive, like he's keeping our family alive right now by providing this grain? All right, so she's going to say to this. I'm going to have to paraphrase this chapter a little bit, and then I'll keep going. They're going to work all day, and everybody's going to be, real dirty and sweaty. And then they're going to go over. The crew goes over. The poor people don't do this, the gleaners, but they're going to go over to the spot over here, kind of a little bit high up where maybe catch some wind. And as they thresh out the grain, they separate the grain from the chaff. They kind of bring it in the air, and the wind will blow and separate it out. They do that in the night. So they harvest in the day, and they clean the grain at night. And then they all go to sleep on the threshing floor. And normally, Ruth would leave, you see, when at the end of the day. She would not participate over there. She would just leave. It said a while ago, she beat out her own grain and left. Now, her mother-in-law says, Ruth, tonight, late in the night, when all that's finished, and after they've had supper, Boaz goes to sleep. So I want you, you're going to be dirty and sweaty. You clean yourself up. And you go and you lay under the covers in his bed. Now that's why people think certain things. But then you say when he wakes up, and sure enough, he did wake up in the middle of the night scared to death because he didn't know this woman was there. You say this, verse 9, chapter 3, verse 9. He said, who art thou? And she answered, I am Ruth, thine handmaid. Spread therefore thy skirt over thine handmaid, for thou art a near kinsman. So she does not, there's nothing that happens here untoward. Nothing. When he figures out what she says there, which is, you're a near kinsman, spread your skirt on me or on us, on our family. She's saying, I want you to take the part of a near kinsman. Could you do that? That's what she's saying. And he understands that. And he compliments her now in several of these verses. And he says, look at verse 12. And now it is true that I am thy near kinsman, howbeit there's a kinsman nearer this night. Tarry this night, it shall be in the morning, that if he will perform unto thee the part of a kinsman, well, let him do the kinsman part. But if he will not do the part of a kinsman to thee, then I will do the part of the kinsman to thee, as the Lord liveth. Lie down until the morning. So he said, you just lay there, I will do it. But there's a kinsman in front of me. Now, to do this, see, you got to do whoever's next in line. He said, there's somebody in front of me. Now, that's a strange thing. God's done all this work and got all this stuff going, and now there's something in front of there's another kinsman that shows up in the story. And so he says, he wants to do it. I mean, he's already, you can tell he likes her. He's fed her lunch. You can tell that there's something between them, right? And he wants to do it, but there's a kinsman in his way. Both of them want it to happen, but there's a kinsman in his way. Now, I'm going to just, the next morning, he goes and he weighs out, look at verse 15. He said, bring the veil that thou hast unto thee and hold it. He held it, he measured 6 measures of barley and laid it on her, and she went into the city. And when she came unto her mother-in-law, she said, who art thou, my daughter? And he said to her, all that the man had done to her. And she said, so this is when he told her about the 6 measures of barley. These 6 measures of barley gave he to me. For he said unto me, go not empty unto thy mother-in-law. Boaz said this to Ruth for a message. These 6 measures of barley will be a message. You hand that to your mother-in-law, and that'll be a message back to her with regard to this whole kinsman redeemer thing. What would that be? And you know what? Naomi got the message. And she said, then said she, verse 18, I love this verse, sit still, my daughter, until thou know how the matter will fall. For the man will not be in rest until he have finished the thing this day. She got those 6 measures of barley that she knew were for her, were a message from Boaz. And how did she know by getting 6 measures of barley that Boaz was not going to rest? It's what it says here. See, that's an important thing. Not going to rest until he had finished the job. Now, up here, I've got a slide about this. The man will not rest until they finish the thing. Remember, Naomi had said, I went out full, the Lord hath brought me home again empty. Boaz said back to Ruth, no, don't go empty. I'm going to give you 6 measures of barley. Don't go empty. Chapter 3, verse 17, we just read it. Boaz gave 6 measures of barley to signal to Naomi that he was working. They all knew this went back, way back to Genesis 1, the creation. God did not rest, but continued to work 6 days until he had got his work done, didn't he? And then he rested. Then it was very good and full. Naomi got the message, and the discouraged woman became an encourager to Ruth. So that's what this is all about. The man will not rest. That's what the 6, just like God didn't rest This man will not rest until he had finished the thing this day. So, Boaz goes up to the gate, and the near kinsman comes by. I'm running out of time, so I got to move through. Otherwise, you can read this on your own. The near kinsman comes by. Boaz explains the whole deal, but he doesn't explain it. He explains it step by step. He says we need to redeem. Somebody needs to redeem Elimelech's land for Naomi, and I want to do it, but you're the first guy in line. And the guy says, no, I'll do it. I'll do it. And he said, well, when you do it, you got to take the full responsibilities of the kinsman redeemer, which means there is a woman involved. It's Ruth the Moabitess. And the guy says this, verse 6, chapter 4, verse 6. Kinsman said, I cannot redeem it for myself, lest I mar mine own inheritance. Redeem thou my right to thyself, for I cannot redeem it. And so the guy says, oh, there's a woman involved too? Yeah, you got to take the whole package, you know. That's the way, oh yeah, that's true, but I can't do it. It'll mess up the way I've got my stuff set up. So he could not do it. You're next in line, Boaz. You do it. So the rest of the chapter, they take off their shoes and hold it up. I won't do that for sake of time. Hold it up to say that we got a deal, and he had the guys at the gate there, the townspeople there, and they hold up the shoe. That means we got it done. And so the deal is done. And look at verse 10. Chapter 4, verse 10. Ruth. Now, moreover, this is Boaz speaking. Look at verse 9. You are witnesses this day that I bought all that was Elimelech's and all that was Chilion's and Mahlon's of the hand of Naomi. Moreover, Ruth the Moabitess, the wife of Mahlon, have I purchased to be my wife, and to raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance, that the name of the dead may be not cut off from among the brethren, and from the gate of his place ye are witnesses this day. Now here's what the people said. Look, verse 11. As he announced the whole thing, Boaz says, I've got it. I've got her, and I've got it. Then all the people that were in the gate and the elders say, we are witnesses. The Lord make this woman that is coming to thine house like Rachel and like Leah, which two did build the house of Israel, and do worthily in Ephratah, and be famous in Bethlehem. Who's Rachel and Leah? They're the wives of Jacob, right? Yeah. They and their handmaids are from which the 12 tribes or the 12 sons came from. And they're basically saying this will continue that lineage, make them famous, and build the family out just like Rachel and Leah built the family out. And be famous in Bethlehem. It's the first time that we see here Judah tied to Bethlehem in that way. This is even before Micah announced that Bethlehem would be the birthplace of Jesus. It's a hint here that Bethlehem is going to be famous, isn't it? This is the first place it's mentioned in that way. Be famous in Bethlehem. And then this verse is the one that blows most people away in verse 12. Let thy house be like the house of Pharez, whom Tamar bare unto Judah, of the tribe of Judah, of the seed which the Lord shall give thee of this young woman. I'm going to talk about Pharez in just a second, but it's strange that they would say, make your house like the house of Pharez. Not strange that they would say, make your house like Leah and Rachel. But who's Pharez? We haven't got to him. He's in chapter 38 of Genesis. You know who that is? Judah, fourth son of Jacob, had an illicit affair with his daughter-in-law. His daughter-in-law. And from that came Pharez, who's in the lineage of Jesus. Make your house like the house of Pharez. Can you believe that? When we get to Genesis, in 2 weeks, when we get to Genesis 38, I'll explain that a little more. I'll give you a taste of it today. So Boaz took Ruth, and she was his wife. And when he went in unto her, the Lord gave her conception, and she bare a son. And the women said to Naomi, Blessed be the Lord, which hath not left thee this day without a kinsman, and his name may be famous in Israel. All right, so they named the son Obed. Because of time, I'm going to move to some slides and finish it up for us in writing here. So I hope you can see that. This is the lineage. So this is Boaz and Ruth. They have the son Obed. Obed has a son, Jesse, and Jesse has a son, David, King David. So this is the lineage. Then let me go to this one. I'm going to just do this very quickly. I'll talk more about this in 2 weeks. I hope you can see that. It's black and white. I don't know if it's come out good enough. This is amazing right here. This is from Genesis 38. Genesis, first book of the Bible. When we're in Ruth, we're way past that, see, in time. Way past that. Somebody figured out. Remember that lesson I did for you about the sevens in the Bible? So I did that between a Christmas and New Year's because that's when I do things that are a little bit, sometimes like this, that are a little bit off. So somebody figured this out. It wasn't me, but I am grabbing it here. That in Genesis chapter 38, verse 9, word 7, letter 2 in Hebrew, word 10, letter 2 in Hebrew, those words are 49, those letters, in a certain verse, there are 3 Hebrew letters that in Hebrew, in our English word of it, would be Boaz. Say, so what? I mean, But 49, 7 times 7, there's a place there it spells Boaz. A little bit later. Now, Boaz hasn't been born yet. We're way back in Genesis 38. What's Genesis 38 about? Genesis 38 is when Judah had the illicit affair and had an illicit son named Pharez. In that chapter, which people have asked me before, why is that chapter in the Bible? That is a terrible chapter. Embedded in that chapter is the name of Boaz. A little bit later, 49 letter intervals is the name of Ruth. There's the Hebrew spelling right there. A little bit later is the name Obed. A little bit later is the name Jesse. And a little bit later is the name David. Wow. All of them, 49 letter intervals, 7 times 7. Notice this. This is the same order. You see that? Hundreds of years before this lineage was done, God had it in the Bible way back in Genesis 38 in a story about the birth of, I'm sorry to use this term, especially we're online and all that, but I'm going to read a verse in a second that maybe I'll just wait till I get to that verse. He had an illicit affair with his with his daughter-in-law. That's what Genesis 38 is about. Embedded is this lineage. You tell me the Bible's not true? They've tried to calculate the statistical probability of that. It's almost infinite that could happen. All right. Pharez, let me just give you this. And I'm giving you this because of this verse. Sorry, that's what I started pausing a while ago. Deuteronomy 23:2. A bastard shall not enter into the congregation of the Lord, even unto the 10th generation shall he not enter in the congregation of the Lord. That's part of the law that was set up. Well, what is old Pharez? Yeah, right there. Right? So when he's born, that's the lineage of Judah. We got a little problem here. That's going to be the lineage of Jesus Christ. Can't enter into the congregation of the Lord for 10 generations. We certainly can't have a king build a temple for 10 generations. Well, look at this. Pharez, Hezron. All that's in the rest of Ruth. All the names, you can read every one of them. All the way down, Solomon, Boaz, Obed, Jesse, David. 10 generations. 10 generations till we get to David. Isn't that something? That's something. All right. Jesus is our kinsman and redeemer. Kinsman and redeemer. Must be kin, must be able to perform, must be willing, must be able to assume all obligations. I'm going to quickly go through the next slides. I really wanted a little more time, but I'm going to go quick. I'm going to steal 2 or 3 minutes, Brother Fowler, and then I'm going to... Boaz and Ruth, Boaz is the kinsman redeemer. He represents Jesus in the book of Ruth. Ruth is the Jew, but she's the child, She's a wife. They were introduced how? Through an unnamed servant. Remember me talking about that servant? If you get saved today, I think I got the verse, but I don't have time to. This is a verse about the Holy Spirit, the unnamed servant that burdens you to be saved. It's exactly how they were introduced. That's who introduced Boaz and Ruth. Boaz was a picture of Jew, picture of Jesus. Ruth, a Gentile bride. Remember, she was a Gentile. And Israel had to leave their land. They had to be exiled from their land so that the Gentiles could hear about the kinsman redeemer. Right? Ruth, this is contrary to popular teaching today, but Ruth did not replace Naomi. The Jews' land is redeemed. Whose land was redeemed? No. Elimelech and Naomi's land was redeemed for her, and she's established, and Ruth marries the Redeemer. The church is the bride of Christ. Basically, I know some Jews are saved, but by and large, the church is a Gentile church. The church of Jesus Christ today, I know some Jews are in there too. Not trying to, that's great. I have good friends that are saved, that are Jews that are saved. Basically, the church is a Gentile church. That's the bride of Christ, the kinsman, a redeemer. Exactly like Ruth. Ruth learned, but those that complain about Israel, wait a minute. How did we learn the ways of Jesus? Through Jews. Jews basically wrote the entire Bible. That's how we learned about Jesus, through Jews. Ruth learned the ways of Boaz through Naomi. A Gentile learns the ways of Boaz through Naomi. We learn the ways of Jesus through Israel. Now, I want you to show one more thing. The reason I didn't stop is for this point right here. Who approached who in the threshing floor? Ruth approached Boaz, right? Even though Boaz obviously liked her. And had he liked her, he could have pursued her and said, hey, I think I'd like to date you a little bit. No. No matter how much Boaz loved Ruth, he awaited her move. No matter how much Jesus loved you, right? He died, he arose again. No matter what, you have to come up and say, yeah, I want you to be my Savior, Lord. Same thing, right? Okay. I'm way over. I'm going to get in trouble. I'm going to just stop right there. Jesus Christ is our kinsman redeemer. Let's pray. Our Father, we're thankful for the day and everyone's here. Bless our time together, Lord. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thanks for being here today.